Hello, everyone, our esteemed panelists and esteemed audience. Welcome to this panel. And this panel is our fifth panel, if I'm not mistaken. Or is it the sixth one? It's the fifth one, sorry, yes, it's number 5. And our panel is entitled Network Perspectives on Media and Communication. And we're privileged to welcome 4 panelists and 3 presentations who are going to tell us our diverse opinions and studies on the topic. So some housekeeping rules a little bit. So each presentation normally is going to take between 15 to 20 minutes. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to have all 3 presentations consecutively, one after another, and we'll keep the Q&A session at the end so that, you know, this session would be more interactive and we'll have more time for questions and answers, basically. And the audience, you are most welcome to post your questions in the chat box or in the question bar that you see here on Livestorm. And I'll make sure to relay all of your questions to our panelists. I hope everything works. We checked. And without further delay, I would like to introduce our first panelist. Our first panelist is Lien Xinmeng, and I hope I'm saying your name right, Lien. Lien is a PhD student. She's preparing a doctoral dissertation that has to do with social network analysis and media sociology. She is based in Shanghai, China, right, Lien? Very good. And today, Lien is going to talk to us about structural balance and evolution debate, and she's going to propose to us a social network analysis on Weibo. The floor is yours, and we're all ears.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna share my screen. Can you see my slide?
Perfect. We can see it very clearly.
Okay. Good afternoon. It's an honor to have this opportunity to introduce my work. I'm Lien Xinmeng, is a PhD student in Fudan University, and today I'm gonna give a detailed introduction about the relationship between the structure and the viewpoints of opinion leaders when they are making comments on the internet. Actually, I have revised my paper, fixed it, and made some adjustment after submitting before. I wish it could be offer more information and be more meaningful than before. And why would I have these questions? Recently, there has been a popular research path about the relationship between the content and structure of the individuals. Many researchers have proved that the 2 elements can constitute with each other, just as a famous saying we all know that is the birds of a feather flock together. You can notice that many scholars, especially in recent years, try to testify and explore the effect of the echo chamber, field bubbles, and so on. So in the social media platform, and I think the opinion leaders is playing a vital role in internet discussion. They will impact on the shift of the discussion folks. So in online discussion, will the opinion leaders be influenced by others who are close to them? This is the start point of the whole paper. Actually, opinion leaders is a classic topic that we all know in communication study. Since the 1940s, the traditional research paradigm of opinion leaders built and developed by largest field and cuts has focused on the ability, personality, or the power of individuals that we know. However, in 1990s, Burt argued that the third perspective of opinion leadership research, it is a shift from the individual characteristic to social embeddedness in the network level. The term embeddedness means that the opinion leaders are no longer defined and measured in a way of isolate entities, but are in highly networked social relations. So individuals can become opinion leaders just because they are stand out in the relationship with others in the network. The relationship between culture and structure is a key topic of the relational sociology and also is the main theoretical framework of this paper. Relational sociology holds that the production of the meaning is essentially a kind of connection activity. Meaning is produced in the relationship rather than given in advance. One of the efforts of the relational sociology is to try to combine culture and the structure. According to this, opinion leaders in social media are not only just confirm their identity in the relationship, but also produce ideas and meanings in the network. Therefore, we address three questions here to explore the relationship between the structure and the views in the context of social media. The first one is about the community detection. We want to find that are there structurally different communities of opinion leaders? The second one is about whether opinion leaders' views and structures are relevant statistically. And the last but not least is to figure out the relationship between the interaction and the structure. Our study is empirical and a case study. We choose a network event happened in China. On December 4, 2020, a girl committed suicide, and the police was next to her at that time. And it is a pity that the girl finally died in this incident. Netizens have held discussion and debate on whether the police had performed their duty according to the date. That data, the impact of the incident was bigger rather than other social incidents. So the case is typical and representative to explore. And about the key time point, we choose a point when the official comment was given by CCTV's famous anchor, so we can treat it as a determinate signal from the authority. So we finally divided it into two periods. And to deal with this data, we took three steps. First, we cleaned the data and deleted the unrelated content. Then use Python, especially the Jieba package, to divide the whole content into Chinese words. Then adopted the WordIJ software to create two semantic networks in different periods, and extracted the main frameworks of discussion. And at last, 5 ordinal levels of comments were collected. This is also the essential references when we coding the opinion leaders' viewpoints in the next part. And the step 2, we focus on two questions here. That is how to find the opinion leaders in the retweet network, and whether the viewpoints and the structure characteristic will correlate with each other. This is what I concerned about. And we use key core algorithm to detect the community in the network. Then, according to the related literature, we finally determined that the nodes based on the in-degree, page rank, and the key core. According to this, that we finally choose the opinion leaders that we need and suit to the standard. After that, we try to encoder their viewpoints manually and exert Spearman rank correlation analysis with using the key value. And there is a third part. We introduce the structure balance analysis to explore the interaction between opinion leaders in different clusters. Structure balance analysis that we all know is first used in the field of psychology researches. This theory thinks that people tend to make friends with those who share the similar views as to keep the psychology balance. For this study, the purpose of using structure balance is not to find the best balanced state, but to help together the opinion leaders who communicate friendly under the function of the rearrangement by project. And this method can help us to observe the details of the interaction practice, which determine the cooperation, support, or conflicts, and this kind of the relationship between opinion leaders under different structure. Finally, we got a multi-value directed sign network. So this is our findings. First, from the two semantical network in two periods, that it's clear that the word police is always be at the center. And I'm so sorry that the shows the Chinese word, but the main meaning is, I assigned a mark that below. It has girl, police, video, save. It is all about this word. So I think that the police is still at the point or at the center of the whole discussion, and people talk to whole discussion around this topic. And by summing up this main cluster of semantical network, we can find that people have the following three sort of attitudes and comments about the police rescue, which can be apparently can be divided into positive, negative, and neutral views according to the intensity. And these attitudes can be characterized into 5 ordinal variables. After simplifying the network, the nodes are divided into different key core levels. And you can see from this picture, and from 1 to 6, the number of the nodes gets less and less. And the 3 to 6 core nodes are displayed by project this software as shown in the figure. If a node is belong to the 6 core cluster, which means that there are 6 other nodes connected to it, they will form together and represented as a closed clusters. We mark the nodes with high key value as deeper. You can see that in the center of this in the picture, that we mark the nodes with high key value as deeper than others. So we can find that when the key is larger, the more central the node is. So why we will choose the key core algorithm to detect clusters? As we all know that especially some friends do the social network analysis will know that earlier researchers have always extracted community based on whether nodes are cohesive or not, used such as weak or strong components, conquer, and clusters, and so many different detection methods to find the community. However, all interesting and meaningful network structure are not represented in the form of cohesive subgroups. And I think this is a very important point that we should learn and reflect. So in fact, opinion leaders tend to access audience who have the potential to follow their ideas or help them to spread their ideas or thoughts. For them, it is not the, I think that rather than build close relationship with everyone in the community, this is not the most valuable for spreading their eyes for opinion leaders. So the key core algorithm just emphasis on the connectivity is more proper in this context of the research. So it can help us to distinguish the different levels of opinion leadership better. So in the next stage, it is about the step 2 that we have calculated the clustering coefficient of different clusters and found that except the nodes in the 6 core, other nodes would form triples, and with the increasing key value, the clusters is more cohesive, and we finally got 45 opinion leaders of 4 to 6 cores. Then we encode their views with about police into 5 ordinal frameworks and do the Spearman's rank correlation coefficient between key values and the views, because they are all treated as the ordinal variables. So the finding is that the 2 variables are negativity correlated significantly, is the below picture. And then we put the nodes in the 3 cores. However, we found that they are not correlated anymore. So we got 2 conclusions from that. Number 1 is that in this case, the viewpoints of 3 core nodes are more diverse. And the number 2 is that the relationship between the viewpoints and the structure of opinion leaders will be restricted by connectivity and cohesion as well. So this is the third part, is about the interaction between the different opinion leaders. We encoded the interaction between opinion leaders in 4 to 6 cores, considering that if they support or oppose with each other, and use the project to draw a figure just like this. Obviously, the positive links are dominated in the whole network, except these 3 nodes. This is in the brown circle, that you can see that especially them, except them, other nodes are connected intensely and closely. The nodes in the yellow circle have many integers, and we can treat them as the opinion leaders in the opinion leaders. And it is not the famous opinion leaders would have more support relationship than others. It is very interesting finding. We can see that the nodes in the red circle has 120 integers, but is located in the marginal area. In the perspective of the clusters, we also can find that most of the 6 core nodes, that is, we mark the deeper, the black nodes, most of the 6 core nodes only have positive relationship between others in the same clusters. And this is a shadow map after arrangement, and the black means positive relationships such as support and press for others or agree with others, and the red ones mean that the negative relationships such as conflict or have a doubt of for someone's words. We can see that according to the theoretical hypothesis of structure balance, after a rearrangement, if a network can achieve the state of best structure balance, there will be only positive relationship within the modulus and the negative relationship across the modulus. That is about this part should be full of the positive attitude, positive relationship, and the different. This part should be the red blocks, full of the red blocks, and have a conflict with each other. And so we can find that the exceptional nodes in yellow or green circle, which means that the interaction between opinion leaders is not just limited within the same community or cluster structurally, but can make full use of the weak connection to exchange ideas with opinion leaders outside the communities. And the second one, we can find that the opinion leaders will also conflict with each other, even though in the same retweet link. You can see them from the nodes in the yellow circle or in the green circle. So finally, we can make conclusion now. We draw 3 conclusions here, and the first one is about the discussion framework. We can see that from emotional expression to rational suggestions, the judgment of police is a center of the discussion. And the next is about the opinion leaders' viewpoints, the relationship between the viewpoints and the structure of opinion leaders. We can see that the opinion leaders with a high key value are correlated significantly with the viewpoints, while those with poor negativities and clustering coefficient are not. That is, whether the structure and the viewpoints are constituted with each other basically depends on the connectivity and cohesion of the whole network structure. And last but not least, we found that there are friendly interaction within and across community at the same time. These empirical facts have expanded the content of the relationship between network structure and cultural practice, and also demonstrated that network structure is not decisive. In general, we have discussed about two things, which I think this is very important. It is the first one is about the key core algorithm is more suitable for our purpose for detecting community in the context of opinion leaders researches, and the connectivity and this characteristic of the network deserve more attention rather than cohesion when we study the opinion leaders. And we also put more practice details into the analysis of interaction of opinion leaders, try to reflect the traditional index focus paradigm, which means that especially in the big data area, and more studies have focused on how to put more index to to measure the opinion leaders. I think we need to reflect this kind of paradigm. And in the future, maybe a multi-event analysis can be tried. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lien, for that very empirical presentation and a lot of interesting stuff that you told us about algorithms and Weibo. I have written down a couple of questions for you, and I'll when I get a moment, I'll ask you the questions at the end of the panel. But before we go to the questions, oh, there you go, Camilla's here. Yes, okay, good. Good to have you here, Camilla.
Merci.
So, donc Camilla, je ne sais pas si tu as entendu, mais Zineb et Jérôme vont faire leur présentation en anglais.
Ah, d'accord. Donc, je te laisse les présenter alors.
Okay, super. Merci beaucoup.
Ça
Donc,
marche.
so we had thought that maybe Camilla, it would be nice to have Camilla introduce you, Zineb and Jérôme in French, but since now you've decided to do it in English, I can just go ahead and introduce you guys in English. So I am privileged and very happy to introduce two of my colleagues here at the university, the Catholic University of Lille, Dr. Zineb Majdouli and Dr. Jérôme Roudier. So Zineb is an associate professor in culture and communication here at the Catholic University of Lille. And she's a communication anthropologist by formation. That's what I gather. So I'm trying to translate basically what you've written in English in real time. So basically, what you focus on is, okay, how I'm going to put that in English. You look at the conceptual tools, and then you let me know if I'm doing it right. Yeah, conceptual tools, and you look at social movements, and you see how they interact with each other from your own point of view that is based on communication anthropology. Did I get that right? So basically, that's what you do. Your mic is off, Zineb. We can't hear it. Yeah.
Thank you, Mehdi. Mostly, but not only social movement, but cultural, digital practices in general.
Okay, great.
I'm trying to apply the tools of anthropology and ethnography to study cultural practices in social media, on social media.
Great, very good. And then we're going to focus on things specifically. As the second panel. So I'm just gonna Zineb, if you can turn off your mic so there is no echo. Cheers. Great, thank you, Zineb. So I will also have the honor to introduce Dr. Jérôme Roudier, who is also an associate professor with us at the FLSH. And so Jérôme is a political theorist, basically. So your background, you come from political philosophy. You've written on Machiavelli, and you're working on a project with Zineb, and maybe what you two are going to present to us, maybe that's one part of the project, I suppose. Yeah. So today you're going to talk to us with Zineb about Facebook and the concept that in French it's docilité numérique. So I suppose in English, digital docility. I think that kind of works. And you're going to look at it, you and Zineb, from both perspectives, yours and Zineb's, which is basically communication anthropology and political philosophy. So without further delay, and I hope I didn't massacre your bios in English, the floor is yours. We're all ears.
Thank you. I'm trying to share my PDF. Just 1 second. Up. Up. Shoot. Here it is.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you very much. So I'll start the presentation. We dedicated. Thank you for presenting us. It was just right. Thank you, Mehdi. We dedicated our survey among some students, around 20 students now, aged from 20 to 25. They were students from our university, actually, and it was our question was based on the main idea that it is my question is, are the spatial and territorial behaviors that occur in daily life interaction still valid in the digital space, and specifically on a social media like Facebook? So can social media as a popular culture be analyzed using the conceptual tools of symbolic interaction analysis? So this is what you said about my anthropology perspective. In other terms, is the concept of proxemics, for instance, developed by communication anthropologists, meaning the description and the definition of our spatial behaviors and our relationships with the material space. Is this concept of proxemics relevant to describe the spatial modalities of interaction on a social digital network? So we were able to establish in previous inquiries that accounts, walls, and information flows on Facebook are highly personalized, territorialized, and bear identity issues. We're not the only one who's saying that, of course. So this identity issues are conveyed by speeches, images, and posts. So users observe and edit their accounts in order to convey a certain presentation of themselves, as Irving Goffman would put it. So in addition to the results obtained, we concluded on the one hand that the tools developed by anthropologists to study ordinary interaction were actually useful for this description of interactions on social media. And on the other hand, we have above all noticed that Facebook has a reputation as a platform that is supposed to be a free public space for discussion and potentially for political or anti-establishment discourse. And on the contrary, it is actually for our students, for our interviewees, we noticed that it was a space of, on the contrary, for peaceful socialization. So online behaviors as an impression management seem to engage the interactant in what Goffman would call a stable definition of the communication situation. So the online interactants seem to observe a certain range of implicit rules guiding their behavior as it is done in everyday life. So following Goffman, observing this interactional order has one main goal: to avoid trouble. So a specific system of civilities is therefore set up based on the rules used in everyday life. So for Goffman, avoiding trouble is not actually a judgment. We don't have to understand it as contempt or judgment, not at all. It is the condition of the very existence of the possibility of human interaction. That's where the idea of digital docility was born, as you correctly translated it, Mehdi. We can therefore question ourselves not on the forms and purposes of political opposition or free speech, but on the forms and purposes of what we have called digital docility. Why do our interviewees avoid conflictual discussions or discourses with their friends on controversial subjects, even when they say in interviews that they do not agree with what is said on the post they are reading or in the comments they are made on their walls? Why do some of our internet users agree to keep a friend or a former comrade of far-right obedience while he makes remarks deemed shocking online without ever engaging in a debate with him, and even less excluding him by deleting him from his friends list, for example? So this is the main question that we are trying to ask. Sorry, I can't see the PowerPoint at the same time. So I'm going to leave Jérôme to introduce his political point of view and his philosophical point of view on this term of docility. Jérôme, à toi.
Thank you very much, Zineb. Thank you very much, Zineb. Can you turn off? Okay, thank you very much. For the political philosopher that I am, what's the point of studying digital docility? Okay. In political philosophy, there is a kind of tradition which is asking, how do we make socialization? It's a question where Pierre Manon in France just now, and Aristotle a long time ago are asking. And there is, in a way, two ways to answer this question. The first way is the theory of the social contract, the problem with the theory of social contract was that for Hume, for example, the bond between people is in fear. And in Smith, it's sympathy. In Rousseau, it's in a way the pity, which is first. And in a way, they made their theories without any link to an experimentation. And what is very interesting with digital is, in a way, with the social media, we have something like a kind of experience validating or invalidating our hypotheses. The question is how to think about the idea of forming a society in a social media. There are places where a form of sociability can appear, certainly for already socialized beings, but with an unprecedented possibility for social innovation. The internet is a place where, by definition, sociability is not a prerequisite. It's interesting that something like social media has existed and has triumphed. So Zineb Majdouli's point is to put forward the idea of digital docility, making it possible to create a bond between interactants. It seems to both of us that this docility is first of all opposed to the two theories of social bond that are voluntary servitude in La Boétie and Hume's theory of habit. Docility here means that we adhere to a reasonable proposition of living together, of society, and we have a reasonable attitude consisting in seeking as much as possible to live together. In this sense, political opposition and militancy takes on a positive meaning and therefore limited meaning. It is not good in itself. It is not how the citizen really becomes an actor. It is one of the possible modalities of political action. In an oppressive system recognized as such, opposition is imposed by definition as good, since oppression is opposite to the reasonable. In a system of political freedom, The real social bond consists, first of all, in seeking compromise, pacification of conflict. Mobilization or political opposition is therefore not separate from the reasons for which it disturbs peace, and the naturally docile citizen must prove the merits of an action which disturbs the social order. This is what the social media and their analysis can show us. In our study overall, individuals manage their socialization in a peaceful manner, which is what Zineb is going to explain to us.
Zineb, can you turn your microphone on, please?
Sorry, it turns off by itself. I didn't. So sorry. So can we therefore see in these ordinary micro behaviors that we observe on Facebook, both the awareness of the existence of a possibility of action and the conscious decision not to engage in it, with a goal that is of maintaining a space of serene, trouble-free communication. So our methodology consists of ethnographic interview for 2-3 hours. Our interviewees open their Facebook pages online and talk about it. We ask them about their reactions, their engagements in online discussions as they explore their own profile, their pictures, their posts, their timeline. We quickly realized that for most of them, avoidance of conflict, debate, or controversy is the watchword of their online behavior. Indeed, one of the most significant actions in a mobilization is to first express, sometimes vehemently, your point of view in public. So being docile in the digital world may perhaps mean not speaking out in a context that prompts us to do so. This is where we are counterpointing what Castells would have said a few years, maybe 30 years ago. For him, networks were a space where the intervention would be where the social movement can intervene. Probably in his mind, more this deteriorated intervention could have more efficiency. We see the contrary. We were particularly vigilant in our interviewees' reactions while we scrolled their timelines to the Charlie Hebdo events and the Paris attacks. And one of our students said that she was shocked by the event, that she did not agree with everything that was circulating online at the time. She doubted the meaning of the media wave that was sweeping at that time. She did not adhere to the slogan, Je suis Charlie, or Pray for Paris during the events of the Bataclan. Yet she has a point of view on the issue, more thoughtful, she says, than what is expressed online by the others, but she chooses not to express it. And it is very important here to emphasize this moment of pre-reflection, of editorial reflection carried out by our internet users before writing and publishing. And I say specifically on Facebook, it's probably very different on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, but this is a Facebook context. What we have called a practice of editorial self-regulation. The aim is always for our interviewees, for our panel, to preserve a certain presentation of oneself online and a certain stability in the interactions because, as many authors have shown before us, identity issues are expressed through publications on social media. The caution shown by many interviewees shows the attachment to this space of expression and to the self-reflection, the self-presentation that it projects on the internet. So our interviewee is therefore faced with a dilemma. There is a strong explicit injunction to speak and to justify her silence, but she decides not to say anything. The situation as she imagines it is not sufficiently problematic to mobilize, to challenge what is being said, and even less to speak out on it at the risk of breaking the unanimity. What the anthropologist would call, as Goffman would call, protection techniques. That is to say, secure resources allowing to maintain the stability of the interaction and the exchanges, which could be understood in our reflection as a form of docility, in the sense of a conscious action in a non-repressive environment. We really emphasize this thing that we are not in an oppressive context. It is a context of political freedom. We prefer the pacification of interaction, sacrificing the expression of one's own point of view, rather than the engagement in a discussion whose outcome will perhaps be sterile or worse, polarizing and disturbing. Jérôme?
Thank you. Thank you. How many time?
Sorry. How much time we still have?
You have about 2-3 minutes.
How much?
2-3 minutes.
Okay, so I'm going to conclude. We have another examples of interactions, but as a conclusion, we can make two links with political theories and anthropologist point of view. First is, as you can see in this example, that the young girl is between, she tried to have a reasonable docility. She didn't agree with everything, but she can't express exactly what she feels, perhaps because she didn't really know what she feels at the deepest. What we call the bound, the link we can make is with Tocqueville tyranny of majority, where this tyranny in a democratic context is soft than in a real political tyranny, but is real. She can't really express herself, first. Second, and last, we can link with the Adam Smith theory of sympathy, where sympathy is the way to link all together in a society, which, of course, there is struggle, of course, we disagree and so on. But if you think that society is made on struggle and so on, you must go to Hobbes and to tyranny, because you must oblige everybody to link with fear. If it is not, you have, in a way, to make a theory about sympathy, and in a way, docility, digital docility, can be another way of exploring what the complexity of the sympathy theory of Adam Smith is linked to our point of view. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this fascinating interdisciplinary talk at the intersection of anthropology, political theory, and media studies. I absolutely loved it. I've written 4 questions here. So I really want to get back to you too about this. It sounds like a great project that you're working on. Okay, so let's go to our third speaker. And I'm happy to introduce to you another PhD student, Siyu Zhou. I hope I'm saying that right. Welcome, Siyu. And Siyu is a PhD student at the Department of Communication at the University of Popeu Fabra in Barcelona in Spain. Today, Siyu is going to talk to us about platform swinging strategies among Chinese international students and the implications for network establishment and cross-cultural adaptation. The floor is yours, and we're all ears. Siyu.
Okay, thanks. So first I will gonna show my screen. Okay. Can you see my slide?
It's coming up. Yeah, perfect. So I think all you need to do now is, there you go. Yeah, click on that, and then it'll.
Wait a moment. Okay, now here it is. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Siyu Zhou, and currently I'm a PhD candidate in the University Popeu Fabra, which is located in Barcelona, Spain. So my presentation today is about the platform swinging strategies of Chinese international students and for their network establishment and their cross-cultural adaptation. So first of all, I want to introduce several keywords as background information. So the first keyword is the international students. So nowadays, according to the data, around the world, there are more than 5 million international students in another country pursuing their higher education, and 1/5 of them originate from China. So many of these international students are actually young adults, like around their 18 or 20s. So it could be the very first time for them to leave their home country and come to another country. So they may find all their familiar symbols are lost, and it's the very first time they have to reprogram and to manage their networks in the host society. And there are many former studies and many scholars found that new technologies, and namely like in history, maybe telephone and then internet, and nowadays we have social media and social network sites, facilitate the process of network management for no matter for individuals or for like international immigrants and these kinds. So the third keyword is the Chinese diaspora. So why are we going to focus on this community? It's quite because there is due to many cultural and political reasons, the Chinese digital ecosystem could be quite different from other parts of the world, or more specifically, the European or the Spanish digital ecosystem. So for the Chinese international students, the issue of digital adaptation could be quite different. So to be more specific, there are some state data. So on the left, we can see that the most popular social medias used around the world in 2020. So there are some, I would say, old friends like Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, etc. But on the list, there are some applications that are only like popular or like limited in the use in Chinese community. Like the fifth, here we have the WeChat, and then QQ, Sina Weibo, and etc. So in following this logic, like the international students when they study abroad, they may find the complexity of their self-identity, and which will lead to their double life, like the double social activities on different online platforms. And what's more, like in the recent years, many scholars have emphasized that we are facing a polymedia environment, which means that individuals are aware of the functions, the affordances of different media and different social applications. For example, somehow people will use WhatsApp to communicate and use Instagram for posting good-looking pictures and use Twitter to express opinions, and in this way. So people are swinging or switching among different kinds of platforms to fulfill their different goals, I would say. And also, like this kind of adoption to particular applications can be linked to cultural differences and somehow to other factors like social status and the region, etc. So becomes the question that would the Chinese international students still stick to their culture-based social medias when we are studying abroad? So here, to answer this question, the fundamental theory we are used in the study is the social capital theory, which is proposed by Pierre Bourdieu, and also the social capital was mentioned as the sum of the resources of all the resources embedded in the social networks. So further, the scholar Putman have divided individual social capital into two parts, like the bridging social capital and bonding social capital. Bridging capital corresponds to our weak tie networks. So it's like it facilitates the flow of information, and which can help us to broaden one's horizon. And on the other hand, bonding social capital corresponds to our strong tie networks, which means that most of them are our family members or very close to friends. So in this way, maybe contribute to our in-group loyalty, but however, contribute to out-group exclusion, etc. And facing a global migration phenomenon, Addison and her colleagues have mentioned another capital called maintained social capital, which can be referred to all the kind of networks one have to maintain and reserve after someone is physically disconnect with them. And also following this theory, Addison have done some empirical studies. At that time, Facebook was still a rising new social media. So in 2006 or 7, and they have found at that time like the use of Facebook among American college students really facilitate their gaining of different types of the social capital. And then following this theory, many scholars have compared like the cultural-based social medias. I would like to mention some of them. Like the scholars have done a comparative study between Facebook and Renren, and Renren at that time was also famous Chinese social media during the time period of 2010 and 2015. But this study was done also in United States. And then more recently, a similar study have done in Macau, which is the special administrative region of China. So the structure of network society in these two places are quite different, because we can know that in Macau, the networks consist of more like people from mainland China. So the results of their study are quite different actually. So also, as I mentioned before, nowadays we are facing a polymedian environment. So the question of our study is that how is the use of these multiple social network sites influence like these three different types of their social capital respectively? So to answer this question, we have done an online survey in Barcelona, and after like small groups of field works and online observations, we have focused our social media's targets to 6, and namely they are WeChat, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Weibo and Twitter. And also in the survey, we have gathered some of their demographic data. So how do we measure like the use of social media? We're going to evaluate their intensity of using these social medias. So first part is that we will ask the participants have to self-report their time spent on each of the social media, like from 0 minutes to more than 3 hours, they have to report it. And then following the time spent, there are 5 attitudinal statements ranged from 1 to 5 to express their agreement. And some example statements are like, using this social network site is part of my everyday activities, and this kind of statements. So below in the table, we can see some of the descriptive information. Well, actually, it's part of the result, but since it's not the objective of this presentation, so I put it here. So we can see that according to the descriptive information, it's not surprisingly that like 100% of the participants are using WeChat during their study in Barcelona. And the intensity of use of WeChat was also significantly higher than the others. And what's more, some of the host social media such as Instagram and here WhatsApp are also owns a high rate of penetration. So the second part of the survey, we are going to measure their different types of social capital. And here we also used some attitudinal statements to measure this kind of social capital. So like for bridging, we focused on their social participation in activities in the host environment. So the statements are like, I am willing to support general activities in Barcelona, or like interacting with people in Barcelona makes me want to try some new things. And the bonding part, we are going to focus on like, how do they manage their networks to solve their somehow big issues, big problems, and emotional issues in the host society. So the statements are more likely to be, there are several people I feel comfortable talking to in the city about intimate personal problems, and there are people in the city I can turn for them for advice when making big decisions. And the maintained social capital here are focused on how do they recover their old ties, and we don't consider their family members in this part of social capital in this study, because we think the family members are usually always there, so it's focused on their friendship management. It's like, I'd be able to find out about events in China from some friends living there, and I will be able to stay with some friends in China if I traveling back to China. So, and the main score of each of the social capital was also showed here. Like bridging is 3.62, and bonding is 3.76, and maintained is 4.27. So now we came to the part of the result analysis. So we use the software SPSS to do our empirical analysis, and we use the hierarchical regression analysis, which is a special case of the multiple linear regressions. In this way, we can also control some of the basic information. In this case, is we can control the demographic variables. So here, in this analysis, we entered all the demographic variables as in the first block. And then in the second block, we have done two parts. In the first part, we first entered each of the social media respectively as a one independent variable. And then we entered the three types of social capital also separately as the dependent variable. In this way, we are going to see if each of the social media could predict the social capital. And then in the second part of it, we are going to enter all these 6 social media as a whole, because we want to see if their strategies of swinging among these platforms can help as an integration for them to predict the social capital. So in this way, we have got some of the preliminary original data. So here, respecting the bridging social capital, we can see that the Facebook use and WhatsApp use, Instagram use are all found to be significant predictors of this kind of capital. And also the total use of it is significant. And respecting the bonding, only the WeChat use is found to be significant, and maintain social capital are significantly associated with WeChat use and Instagram use. And in all 3 cases, the whole use of it are significant. And we can see that in the case that the coefficient of Instagram is pretty higher than the other kind of social digital platforms. So here we can do some go to some conclusions. So the first is that, consistent with some of the former studies I have mentioned, if we divided these social medias into two parts, so the host social network sites, like namely Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, can predict their bridging social capital, and WeChat, as a very popular and home-based social media, can significantly predict their bonding social capital during their stay in Barcelona. And both WeChat and Instagram use are can predict their maintained social capital. So what can we interpret from this kind of conclusion is that we did some interpretation is that like if people, at least Chinese international students, can intensively and take advantage of these hosted social media more, and they are more likely to manage their networks with the local people, I would say, and in this way, like the way we have measured the bridging social capital, in this way they can also participate in more social activities in the host society, and what may further help them to gain better intercultural understanding in Barcelona. And inconsistent with some of former studies, the WeChat use does not predict the bridging social capital during a stay here. So it can predict that it may be caused that the co-national networks in Spain, or to say in Barcelona, are still limited in small groups. There is no strong like ethnic communities still in the host society. So people or the international students are still sticked into homogeneous small groups, and they cannot find many new informations about the local society in these platforms. And lastly is that we found a very quite surprising finding of Instagram use and the associating with maintained social capital. And we interpreted it because one of the reasons is because that Instagram has its very original affordances compared with other social network sites, because it's an image-based social network sites, and people do not have to actually read a lot of words on this site. And as young adults nowadays, young people are preferring more like pictures, and including nowadays TikToks and videos to for their self-exposure. So actually in this way, Instagram is still very popular, no matter inside or outside mainland China. So actually, many people inside of mainland China still join this platform to keep connect with their networks, no matter it's inside mainland China or outside China. So it could be a very special platforms and for the Chinese citizens actually to connect to their networks worldwide. And vice versa, actually, for the other parts of the world actually can also take advantage of these affordances of the platforms to manage the networks with Chinese students or with the Chinese citizens. So that's part of my presentation. So thanks.
Thank you, Siyu. Thank you very much for that interesting insight that you gave us on your work. I see questions are starting to come. There are questions posed by Julie and Bogdan. I'll make sure that you get those questions. So before I open it up the Q&A, I'd like to thank all four of you actually for being so concise. And this concision will give us the opportunity to have a rich Q&A session, hopefully. So yes, you can all turn on your cameras, and then we'll turn this into a more interactive session. I can perhaps start off with one question. I'm going to use my privilege as moderator here and just ask the first question. So because the question touches on Siyu and Lien's presentations, I'm going to ask one question to both of you, and you both can take turns and answer the question if you wish to, and if my question makes any sense. So there are parallels, obviously, in your works, but in terms of you're working on social media. But I didn't really hear Castells in your presentation, so I was just wondering, in your PhD, in the general overall PhD project that you're working on, do you use any Castells, and specifically his notion of network and network power? Like, for example, Siyu, when you were talking about affordances, and you beautifully used that concept in your work, are you planning on situating it with how Castells, for example, talks about access to networks in terms of network power, resistance, and so on? And the same question to you, Lien. Go ahead. You can start answering, any of you. Yeah.
I feel very. What's wrong with that? Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah. Clear.
Yeah. I'd like to say that the book of the Castell is one of the classical books that we really need to read in our PhD period, and our tutor will give some plans and schedule about it, and we will hold some discussion, especially about this, especially his brilliant the book of especially his thoughts about the space of floor or the space of the place, and this is a very common and popular concept that we all know. I really forget to add some words about him in my PPT. I feel sorry for it, but I think that my paper is really has a connection with his idea, especially I think that the relational sociology, especially the in the network and the opinion leaders, is defined by the relationship with in a network with flow, just like the flow on the internet. I think this is have the principle of the Castell's words. So that's all.
Thank you, Lien.
Well, so in my case, actually, so it's like when I was like starting to think about my study, at that time, I began to use, like, as you can see in my presentation, I began to use some theories like the social network theory or the social capital theories. And then actually during this process, I have found and began to read some of the books of Castell. So, and actually at that time I have found that there are many parts of the concepts and ideas that really correspond with what I'm doing with the other theories. So actually, so in my own thesis or in my own project, I used some of the ideas of Castell as a complement of my studies. So actually, I would say yes, no, I don't really use some of his specific theory in my projects. Yes, but like in his idea of like the network can facilitate the flows of information, and these kind of ideas are very parallel and correspond with my study. So that's my opinion. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Siyu and Lien. Okay, so I'm going to abuse still my position here as mod, and I'm going to ask a question to our two panelists, Zineb and Jérôme, and I promise I'll then relay the questions from the audience. And Camilla, n'hésite pas à revenir sur scène, et tu peux bien sûr poser tes questions en français aussi, parce que déjà on a pas mal de monde dans l'audience aussi qui sont francophones. So thank you, Zineb and Jérôme, and I really love that concept of digital docility. I think with that concept, you really pinpoint what we've all sort of have had some contact with, and digital docility, I think it captures that experience, let's say. And I'm just wondering, so Castells, and that you mentioned rightly, talking about power, how dominance always generates resistance in network. That's his famous theory of network power. But with digital docility as a concept that you're proposing, that's quite a challenge to Castell's theory, because for him, domination always generates resistance, but not in the case of digital docility, isn't it? So I'll let you elaborate. Zineb, I'm just, there, your mic's off.
Okay, thank you very much. So it was actually interesting to see Castell's point of view 30 years ago, and what we observed in our study. But the thing is of course, is to understand that it is a very situated study. It's a specific social background. It's specific, is they're students, they're youngsters, they're young adults. There are a little some social and economic determinations here, and specifically when we say that they are students from our university, which is of course not any university. It's a university that is private, that is supposed to be that appeals to a certain class of people. So I think social classes here is main component. But the thing is that we wanted to talk to ordinary people, ordinary students, of course, and they are not activists. They are not actually interested in activism, but they are faced in our study with the events that we talked about. We were particularly interested in what was their reactions when they had the Paris attacks, and we went back. So it's of course it is also a study, an interview about what happened in the past. So they have to, in the interview, to realize what happened to them and talk about it, and in real time. So they are not prepared to give us arguments. So we just scroll over their timeline, and they have to comment on what happened. So we sometimes there are contradictions that we encountered in the interviews, but mainly what happened is that we see that they are always trying to, Bonia Rospara asked the same question. This editorial regulation is that they say all the time, I thought about what I was writing. What I'm writing is important. It is a reflection of myself, a reflection of my identity. And we just found the way, a conceptual way to, what you said, to give a name to this. What is this exactly that's happening when you try to choose your words and choose your image that you're posting, etc. Of course, not everybody is doing this. Some people are more extraverti, more more showing off. Some people are less interested in this. But I think that everyone learns from at a time or another that there is something going on there, and sometimes maybe we choose we choose our words. We don't play this game lightly. So that's what I can say. But of course, the limits is this. It's a 20 people interview. It's a very specific. We're trying to enlarge the panel so that we can probably generalize a little more. But it will always be like anthropology, of course. It's always be a situated situation. Yeah, Jérôme, à toi.
Just a word.
Ton micro.
Just a word.
Voilà.
That's.
Ton micro. Ah oui, c'est bon.
I have two words. First, being authentic. I don't really understand what is being authentic. it's very complicated. There are many things, and it's not because I speak loud that I am authentic. I think it's not obvious. What we thought, it was the beginning of the problem. The beginning in a society of freedom, globally freedom. What makes links? What makes bonds between people? Why are we going to be together? And in a way, the problem with the Castle point of view is we are in a struggle. We are all together because, in a way, we are struggling and so on. And it's a question. We don't have the answer, and so that's why Zineb have right to say it's only 10 students, 20 students we have studied. But how many? How can you say that in a freedom land everything is based on struggle? What's your experimentation? So don't know. Perhaps little the twice.
Yeah, perhaps both of them. Yes, indeed. Yeah. Great. Just to add on what you said, Jérôme, about authenticity. Thank you, Bugna. Bugna is our dear colleague here at ISTC, and you know Melvin Bragg with BBC4. He has this show In Our Time. He hosted 3-4 philosophers, and they specifically talked about the concept of authenticity for an hour. I would really invite you, Bugna, to check that out, and you will get how complex this notion of authenticity is. And you did ask this question to a philosopher who is Jérôme, so I think he was the best person to answer that question. Great question, thank you very much. I want to also relay. I know, Jérôme, you tried to answer Julie in the chat box, but maybe because it's a really important question as well, and I want to give you and Zineb the chance to probably elaborate on this a little bit more, because it's also very crucial. So basically, Julie is asking you, would you say that the new generation of users are also becoming more aware of their e-reputation? Okay.
Zineb, ton micro.
I think it is a Facebook thing. It's very so I tried to say earlier that it's a very specific it's this study about people, etc., but it's in specific social media. Facebook is an old fashioned now social media, so there is, I think, what would call we are used to it. We are used to it. It's not a new tool, and we are used now to. And it was supposed to be more about discussion, about socialization, about network, etc. And the young people now don't use Facebook. Actually, they use other networks. But the other networks. It is interesting to say that the other networks, apart from Twitter, Instagram, etc., they are not networks for sharing ideas. They are networks for other stuff. So this place where that we old people used to think about as, wow, there's a place where I can say things, and I witnessed this actually in oppressive regimes. In Morocco, during the Arab Spring, it was an explosion of debates and controversy and polemic. I don't know what it's called in English, whatever. So you understood what I was saying. So this is but in an oppressive regime, actually, Facebook works that way. But in a regime where there is political freedom, is something else. Something else is going on, and that's what we're trying to say about it. And this thing of reputation, I think it is actually people are more and more aware of the impact of their social image on the internet. I stay very vigilant with in our panel, actually. And also one last thing I want to point out, that this notion of docility for us is not, how do we say, c'est pas péjoratif. It's not a negative.
Yeah, derogatory.
It's not, the notion and definition that we give to docility, it's not being submitted, or it's a social virtue. That's what we said. It's a political virtue as a social cohesion tool that is provided to us as social beings trying to make society, try to live together in a world, in a context of political freedom. I'm not, I don't know, we have the Chinese people around, so it's not the same context, I think. So
Zineb, as somebody who is originally from Iran,
oh, of course,
I would understand.
I think you understand what I mean. Jérôme, peut-être a autre chose à dire.
In a way, it's like for individual, like soft power for major nations, if you see what I mean. It's of course, I think the question of Jolie is very interesting, and probably more aware because of the habits probably Facebook is going to be less used by young people instead of Instagram, for example, just because Facebook needs to have something to tell and to want to tell something. And if not, it's better to use a photograph. You say less things, you just manage to have your picture, and that's all. So perhaps it's a use. And for Twitter, it's an opposite because you have anonymous. You can't say it's not me, or you can try.
Not always, but we can.
Not always.
Et je dis que les efforts aux médias, bien sûr, ce qu'on appelle media literacy, et portent certainement leurs fruits, bien sûr. Et là, je profite pour changer de chaîne un peu. On a encore quelques minutes parce qu'on a aussi un public francophone. Et là, je profite pour vous poser la question, Jérôme et Zineb. Donc, ce projet-là, magnifique. Et donc, quelles sont les prochaines étapes? Est-ce que vous allez analyser d'autres plateformes? Est-ce que vous visez à élargir votre public à analyser ou pas?
Zineb, ton micro.
Pardon, pardon. À chaque fois, il se désactive tout seul, je ne sais pas comment. Oui, on aimerait bien élargir à d'autres publics, parce que c'est vrai que, en fait, le panel qu'on a choisi, il est vraiment trop restrictif d'un point de vue socio-économique et aussi très local. Donc, du coup, il faudrait pouvoir l'élargir pour simplement avoir la possibilité de généraliser plus facilement, ou au moins monter légèrement en généralité, ce serait bien. Voilà, mais pour l'instant, effectivement, les autres types de plateformes ne rentrent pas en fait dans cette dimension. C'est vrai qu'il y a quelque chose dans Facebook qu'on ne retrouve pas, que je ne retrouve pas sur Twitter, que je ne retrouve pas sur Instagram. C'est un type d'échange qui est très différent, et que Facebook avait vraiment quelque chose, comme je disais tout à l'heure, de très territorial, de mur, de soi, etc., que je ne retrouve pas spécifiquement sur d'autres plateformes. Après, je ne les connais pas beaucoup, donc il faudrait peut-être voir ensuite dans quelle mesure ils peuvent être intéressants à explorer. Mais j'aimerais bien entendre, on pourrait écouter des possibilités, en fait, on est tout oui. S'il y a d'autres choses.
L'autre dimension, c'est de travailler justement des auteurs comme Smith, comme Tocqueville, ceux dont on a l'intuition qu'en fait, ils sont très proches des idées qu'on croit identifier, parce qu'en fait, il est tout à fait possible qu'on se creuse la tête sur des choses qui ont déjà été élaboré par de grands penseurs d'une autre manière, de manière parallèle, mais on parle de socialisation. Donc à la fin, ça serait quand même surprenant qu'on arrive à des résultats totalement différents. Donc on a aussi ce projet-là de faire une sorte de séminaire de lecture d'auteurs, Goffman évidemment, etc. Et évidemment qui irait plutôt dans notre sens, bien entendu, au moins dans un premier temps.
En tout cas, moi, je serais vraiment un peu preneur des résultats que vous allez. Donc, je vais vraiment suivre avec attention l'issue de ce projet. Donc, merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, dear panelists, for your presentations. I really enjoyed chairing your panel. It's been a privilege and an honor for me. Hopefully, we will get in touch. In the post conference publications, where you already have that call for papers in the conference brochure, and you have the dates. And I'll come back to us tomorrow during the conference closing. Thank you also to the audience for being with us and for the questions. Bogna, Judy, thanks a lot. All right, so we have one more panel today, starting in half an hour. That's going to be our last panel of the day. And the last panel, because we will only have one event left, and that's tomorrow, and that's our keynote, and we will host Professor Castells, to which I warmly invite you all. If you haven't registered already, you can easily do that on the link, and just make sure to use the drop-down menu and use the last event, and you'll be registered. So without further delay, I can close this session and wish you all the best, and on se donne rendez-vous dans 30 minutes pour notre panel 6. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.